Hello, class. This is my podcast review video for Management 555 Strategic Leadership. So, the podcast that I listened to was called the Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast. So, it's run by Craig Groeschel, who is a very well renowned pastor, author, and public speaker in the field of leadership, especially faith based leadership. He's a Christian and he bases most of his teachings on the Bible and Jesus Christ. So his podcast is really interesting because he has a lot of good insights about leading people, but then also has a lot of guests on his podcast who he has relationships with, like some CEOs of some companies, some different inventors of different products and services, and then as well as other leaders of faith, other pastors of churches. So his podcast is very interesting, and he bases his leadership practices around leading with love. So he wants you to develop emotional awareness in your leadership and intelligence and love and care for people, but also to hold them accountable and give them clear direction on what needs to be accomplished for the task at hand. So some of the key concepts that he talks about, first of all, I mean, his leadership practices revolve around his faith in the Lord. So they're all derived sort of from the Bible, and one of his main concepts is leading with love and truth. So it's important always to love your team members and understand them and have compassion for them, but also you need to have truth in your conversations as well, because a lot of times he explains that love can formulate in the sense of avoidance in critical conversations. It can kind of manifest itself in that form, especially when you're trying to keep the peace amongst the group. But he reiterates a lot that you can't grow what you don't know, and it's the leader's responsibility to help people understand their performance and hold them accountable for that, as well as helping coach and mentor them towards their goals. So some of his other really interesting concepts are the ideas of blind spots, as well as empowering ownership, and then being consistent. So blind spots just means that all leaders are going to have things that they're proficient in and things that they lack. And it's really important to either build a team around you or build systems in place that help you attack those weak spots and become at least serviceable in all of those areas. So that could be, hiring someone on your team that's better at helping you schedule or with, improve your communication skills, whatever that could be. But understanding what your blind spots are, doing blind spot analysis to better be able to lead your team. Another is empowering ownership, which means not just delegating tasks as a leader, but also delegating authority. So empowering your people to take charge and make decisions on their own. It's a lot more powerful to ask your team to go figure out how to do something to accomplish some task rather than telling them, go do this task. That's because you're actually building followers in that sense instead of building leaders amongst your team. And it's much better to have to build a group full of leaders who are all capable of supporting the team's goals and thinking critically on their own, rather than always being having to be told what to do at all times. And last thing is just being consistent in all of your actions. So leadership and effective team management a lot of times revolves around trust. And in order to build trust, you have to be consistent in your messages and your vision for the team, and as well as your expectations that you're holding your team to. And you have to hold all of your team members to the same expectation. If you're not consistent as a leader, you're going to build distrust and resentment amongst your team members. So some of the practical applications that he talks about in his work in his podcast is to set triggers as well as have intentional to-do lists. So in order to help break your leadership down into more manageable sort of tasks or ideas, he talks about how it's really good to set triggers in your workplace or in your personal life where, when X situation occurs, I automatically am going to do Y. So that might be, when some team performance metric is either met or not met at some point in time, you're going to, automatically schedule some celebration for your team or hold a meeting to discuss team accountability and performance or whatever that might be. But it's a lot easier for for you to digest that and not be overwhelmed if you can set triggers up in your workplace, as well as have intentional to-do lists. That means that your to list shouldn't just consist of the tasks that have to get done or the things that are the most urgent to do, physically, but it should also be things like strategic initiatives. So it might be, in my to-do list, I am going to check in on so-and-so after our conversation from 2 weeks ago and talk about if they've come up with any additional ideas on some thought that they had before, or other sort of high-level activities that you may be thinking about in your day-to-day, but you maybe not be recording. So he says to be very intentional and document everything that you want to be able to do, because documentation is the first step to getting things done. And the last thing is the concept of tearing down walls. So he talks about this a lot, where you're not actually physically tearing anything down, but the idea that as a leader, your team members and as well as people outside of your team around you in the organization are going to naturally build up walls of protection between themselves and you. And this means that they are not always going to lie to you, but they're maybe withholding some truths or covering up some problems in order not to bother you, reach out and bother you, or make you concerned. So this idea is that as a leader, you should be trying to investigate and understand and build compassion with people and trust, so that they feel comfortable coming to you about all aspects of their work and just having open conversations. So it's a lot easier to fix problems later on when they arise if you have already been aware of them and how the situation's been unfolding over time. So by tearing down these walls, you can build a lot better internal communication and prevent having small problems turn into big problems down the road. So I really enjoyed this podcast, and I actually think I'm going to continue listening to him. So I'm a Christian myself, so I've really enjoyed listening to his messages that revolved around faith, but also in the realm of leadership in the professional sense. So I really recommend the Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast to anyone who is interested, especially people who are members of the church or faith-based leaders. So thank you. This is my review of the podcast.